Hey, that's a nice TRX4. What's it got? That seems to be the question. Nowadays, you can't just have a TRX4, which like about 2 years ago was the thing. Now, you have to have a TRX4 and you must have some cool upgrades. So let's dig into this and see what I've done to my car to keep it in a budget, not spend thousands of dollars or euros on it, and actually make the car almost as capable as the guys that have spent the entire budget. Now let's begin with the bodies. I like to run light bodies when I'm out against other crawlers. Now adding accessories might put your car a little bit off balance. If I take this, the accessories are quite heavy, or well, not quite heavy, but they are heavy. So I'd like to balance it out by adding some weight down to the chassis, so that when you do pick the car up roundabout in the center, always make sure it's nose heavy and not tail heavy. So if you hit the car's center point, pick it up, it should be nose heavy. So the other thing that I do to be more competitive, I get rid of the bumpers. Gives me a higher angle of attack, front and rear, and it doesn't hook up on the trail as much. And the next upgrades are weights in the wheels. What I did here, I opened up the glue area, pulled the tire off the rim, added around 30 grams of soldering wire or soldering wire, wrapped it around the inner part of the rim, sealed it down with some tape, and then glued the rim back on. Having 30 grams of weight pushing down on the tire, on each tire, is giving you a performance basically in every position. So if you downhilling, if you hill climbing, if you side hilling, there's always more pressure keeping the car on the trail. So while we're on the topic of weights, I have added some weight boxes. One box in the rear and another box in the front. So I can play around with how much weight I can actually put into these boxes at any time. This one is open. I can use a double side tape and just stick whatever weight I need for the trail right down. And if I don't need it anymore, take it out. In the front, I always like to keep my weight. I actually don't have an access, or it's not accessible. I've put it on there and it stays on there. With the rear, I like to play with it. Mostly I take it out, or I run equal weights front and rear. And once you decide to change your body or do a body swap, always balance the car out with the new body on the vehicle. It really gets noticeable if you're on extreme obstacles. That's when you start noticing that your body or your balance of your car might be off. And coming to the electronics, I have not changed the ESC or the original ESC that the Traxxas TRX4 comes with. I'm absolutely happy with this. I've got it set on crawler mode. When I'm on a steep downhill, I just let it go. It crawls down with a very, very slow speed. And I've got other crawlers as well. And I find the control that this gives me on the throttle, on the brakes, I find it more than enough, put it that way. So I do not find the need to actually change this. There are a couple of guys that say, yes, there's better performance, slower crawling. I have achieved all of these things in the last 2 years making videos without actually changing the ESC. So that's one tip for you guys, maybe, that this is not like a necessary thing that you have to buy one and you have to change it. This can stay in there and it performs and it doesn't break. And I've put it in water as well, and it's just survived up to now. So that might just be a bit of a side information there for you guys. So in combination, I am still running the original 21 turn Traxxas motor. I have not found the need to change it for a faster one or for a slower turning one. This gives me a super slow crawl, and it also gives me high speed. So in combination, to get slower crawls, I'll speak about that just now, we can actually do some maintenance on the transfer case and the diffs. Let's get to that a bit later though. So the next thing you can see is that my shocks are still original. They are very good shocks. Some people don't like them, but to make them better, you take the 30 weight silicone oil out of them and replace it with 10. The 10 weight shock oil just gives you such a smooth articulation. So not only are you getting more contact on your obstacle, but on a high speed run, it absorbs the terrain so much better, and it gives you a lot more controlled steering. So the car doesn't just veer off to the left or the right. It'll always stay on track, and your steering, it just reacts a lot better to your steering than it did before. And everybody is always talking about the slowest crawl and the most control on obstacles. That, my friends, you can achieve by opening your transfer case, cleaning it out, and re-greasing it. You can get some silicone oil from Traxxas, and this makes a massive, massive difference. The gearing just runs so much smoother that as you touch your throttle, the car starts to roll very, very smoothly. You can add the same kind of maintenance to your axles, front and rear. So once you've done all three of them, the front axle, the rear axle, and the transfer case, you notice a massive difference in your slow crawl, which gives you more control, obviously, on your obstacles. And coming to the servo, as you can see, I am still running the original servo. Everybody says this is not a good servo, it's too weak and it breaks. I find it is on the borderline of weak. So you can get, put it this way, you don't have to spend a lot of money on it to buy a new one. You can keep it in there, and my channel is all about, you know, pushing everything to the limit without spending too much money. So I have pushed this servo for 2 years now. It hasn't broken, and the servo gives me enough performance to steer the wheels on, let's say, the downhill obstacle when there's a lot of weight on the car. What I do is I steer, and if the servo doesn't have enough power to steer, I just touch the throttle trying to go backwards. So while I'm going backwards, it actually moves the wheels into the direction that I want to be going in, and then I go back forward. It's not like I'm reversing a lot. I've just touched the throttle, can just like jerk the car a little bit forward and backwards, and the wheels will start turning. So another point for you guys, you can run this servo. It's not really that necessary to change it. If you do want more power, obviously go ahead and change it, because it is on the borderline of weak. It's still strong enough, but it is on the borderline of weak. But I'm gonna keep running it until it breaks, just to show you guys how long it's actually survived. And as you can see, that the position of the servo is in the front, whereby it used to sit here in this bracket. What I've done is I've 3D printed a new bracket and moved the servo forward. Why would I do something like that? Not just did I move it forward, I also moved it down. The reason why I'm moving it down is, once I added the flex kit, I changed the angle of the panhard rod or the track bar. Now, with having more droop, the track bar is at a very steep angle. You don't want that. So adding the flex kit puts the panhard rod or the track bar at a better angle to the axle, that keeps the servo steering arm at a high angle as well. So that's why I moved the servo not just forward, I moved the servo actually down to be in line with the track bar, so that the steering servo arm is almost in line with the track bar. So that kind of sums the flex kit up. The reason why the flex kit is in there to actually get more droop out of the front axle. The rear axle, you can get a lot of droop out of it because there is no steering on it. But the front axle, because of all the steering and the track bar, it is more difficult to actually get more droop out of it. So the Flex kit, this is a 3D printed one, but I have seen on the internet there are some kits available that you can buy. They're made out of aluminium, and the Flex kit actually just allows the front axle to get more droop. But in order for more droop, you need to have a lower position on the track bar. And coming to the shock towers on the rear axles, there are a couple of different models on the market. This one is also 3D printed. You can get aluminium ones and play around with the position of the rear shock. What this also does, it gives you more droop on the rear axle. It's a lot easier just by mounting the shock tower and playing around with where you actually want to position the shock. Gives you the capability of getting about 1 centimeter more droop out of the rear axle. It's the same with the Flex kit in the front. It's also around about 1 centimeter more droop. But if you want to go a little bit further, you can get yourself a shock absorber, which is a bit longer. Now, I don't find that necessary, because 1 centimeter in a 1 to 10 scale car is like almost 10 centimeters on a real car, right? So if you think of 10 centimeters droop on a real car, that's quite a lot. If you're hearing 1 centimeter on a rock crawler, you might not think that's a lot, but it is actually, it's enough. It might not be a lot. You can get more out of it, but it is definitely enough, and it changes your performance quite a bit. And obviously we have changed the original rock sliders, which used to sit in here, and you could clearly see they sit a lot lower than the boat-sided rock slider that I have installed here. The boat-sided rock slider, it already tells you it's tapered like the bottom of a boat, so that it doesn't get hooked up too early. If you're comparing it, you clearly can see that this original would be hooked up or get hooked up a lot earlier, because it sits a lot lower. This one, not just that it sits higher up, it's also boat-sided, so there's less chance of it actually hooking up, or it hooks up later. So you might have more compression in your suspension, and you only have about 3 millimeters difference, say now from this rail to this rail, but you have over 1 centimeter difference to the original. So that both-sided rock slider does give you that little bit of an extra than say now a straight one would give you. And plus, because it's both-sided, because it has an angle, it does slide and slip sideways off the obstacles a lot easier. And now coming to the side heeling strings. These strings here don't allow the chassis to tilt on side heeling. So this was actually the idea, that when the car side heels, the body doesn't twist over and pull the car over. So the droop of the axle, which we've spent so much time on with Flex kit and shock towers to get more droop out of it, this actually prevents the droop again. So it has a negative side to it. So my idea is, because I actually quite like the performance of the car with the strings installed, I'm kind of like in a bit of a mix, because the car does get hooked up because there's not enough droop. So it does get hooked up, it does beach out, and it gets stuck. Now, the best thing to do on these strings would be to be able to actually loosen them and tighten them. So when you're crawling normally, you could loosen them, getting the droop back into the car. And also obviously all the work that we've done to achieve more droop in the vehicle now gets manipulated by these strings. So obviously all the work we've done, it's just no use, because the strings actually just prevent that. So when I pick the car up now, there's no droop. As you can see, the strings hold the axles high. So this is good for high speed runs, it's good for hill climbing, and it's good for downhilling, and it's good for side hilling. But it's not good for articulation and getting over obstacles, because you will beach out and get stuck. So if you do want to install these side hilling strings, which are basically the idea of getting a better side hilling angle out of the vehicle, the best thing to do is kind of connect it with a servo so you can tighten them and loosen them. I don't have an idea on that yet, but I'm going to keep working on that, because it changes the truck in such a weird way, and it's such a lot of fun. So if this would be mechanically be changeable, so if like with a servo or with a toggle switch on the radio, this would be such a cool idea, and it'll even be a better idea than, let's say, having diff locks that you can switch on and off, you know. It just brings the car into a state where you can say, okay, I've got a high speed run to do. Let's say you're on a competition where you're running after your vehicle, for instance. You could tighten these strings up, do your high speed run. The next thing would be a downhill run, keep it tight, and then after that you have obstacles to do. You loosen the strings, you get all the droop and all the articulation back out of the car. So the articulation still works 100% because the strings do move. Put some tapes on here, you can actually see that they move forward and backwards while the car's articulating, but no droop. That means no droop. I get a very high angle of attack on the side hilling section, and also when I'm hill climbing, I don't get this position where the chassis is completely bombed out at the bottom on the rear and it starts to lift up on the front. You kind of have that situation where it just digs in and it just wants to sit. So this does work very well. The only thing is it has to be changeable while you're on the run. So there needs to be a servo in here, or two servos, which actually loosen and tighten them to make this system work absolutely perfect. So guys, that is the way this rig is set up. Yes, I know I have a 3D printer and I use my 3D printer basically for everything. So everything on the back of this vehicle is 3D printed. The little nets, rear view mirrors, everything is done. My shock towers, my rock sliders, my body mounts, the weight boxes, the flex kit. A lot is 3D printed on this car. Now you would say, okay, yeah, but buying a 3D printer is expensive. I have two friends that have TRX4. The one guy spent 500 euros, the other guy spent around 800 euros on his car. A printer only costs between 200 and 250. So, and also you're not just going to use a printer for your hobby, you're going to use it everywhere. I tell you, the spectrum is just, it's out there. It's massive what you can do with that. So these are upgrades that don't cost a lot of money. That's what this channel is about, keeping everything as low as possible. And that's on purpose, that I don't change my motor and I don't change my ESC and I don't change my servo, to show guys out there it is possible to run the car like this. All the other niggles and tweaks that I've done to the car obviously gives me a high performance crawler and more than capable of actually outrunning some of the other guys that we do go crawling with. So guys, that's it for me this week. Thanks for watching. Subscribe to the channel. Don't worry about it. I do have tires on the way. I've got some more Proline tires that have been ordered. They're on back order at the moment. Probably next week I will have them in stock and we will set up another competition. Anyway guys, thanks for watching. Subscribe to the channel and we'll see you guys next week. Ciao, bye.